And I called him and was like, Dad, I'm in the thick of it.
What I would explain to her, go all the way in, but leave sort of mental breadcrumbs to get you back to where you need to be. I use the word veneer, which is like my teeth. Behind this is a chaotic situation, but put it on, have your moments, and then take it off and come back to you.
Ashley Dvorkin, Fox News.
The very latest headlines, along with in-depth analysis and conversation, depend on Fox News Radio and FoxNewsPodcasts.com.
Upping the ante to combat inflation. I'm Steve Rappaport, Fox News. The Federal Reserve, as expected, raising a key interest rate again.
Fed officials intensifying their attempt to tame hot inflation and raising interest rates to 0.75 percentage point for the first time since 1994 and signaling more large rate increases will come. The move will increase many consumer and business loans to a range of 1.5% to 1.75%. The central bank is ramping up its drive to tighten credit and slow growth, with inflation having reached a 4-decade high. The fear on Wall Street is that too aggressive hikes in interest rates will force the economy into a recession.
Fox's Hillary Barsky. Wall Street welcomed the news. The Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all closing in positive territory. An expert on COVID-19 now has it. White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci testing positive, but his symptoms are said to be mild. Fauci will continue working remotely while he isolates. President Biden pledging additional military aid to Ukraine as the war with Russia rages on.
The largest single release of weapons and military equipment to Ukraine, totaling about $1 billion, comes as Russia continues to gain territory in the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine. The U.S. military aid is expected to include anti-ship missile launchers and more high artillery rocket systems. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has been meeting with dozens of allies in Brussels, warning the West must step up weapons deliveries. NATO's Secretary General has pledged additional support and says Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky will be invited to address the alliance's summit later this month.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. A police officer in Michigan charged with murdering a black man during a traffic stop has been fired. Grand Rapids officer Christopher Schurer shot Patrick Lyoya in the back of the head on April 4th. Schurer says Lyoya had control of his taser when he shot the man. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, the Fox News Rundown, a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. Your daily dose of news twice a day, going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Maria Bartiromo.
I'm Brian Kilmeade, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Subscribe and listen now by going to FoxNewsPodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. From the Fox News Podcasts Network.
Hey, this is Trey Gowdy, host of the Trey Gowdy Podcast. Every Tuesday, you'll hear what's on my mind. Plus, every Thursday, there's a special bonus episode where we answer the questions that are on your mind. Make sure to spend your Tuesdays and Thursdays with Trey. Subscribe now at FoxNewsPodcast.com or wherever you download podcasts. Hope to see you.
America's listening to Fox News.
FDA advisors endorse giving Moderna's COVID-19 vaccine to children under the age of 5. The panel will vote later today on whether to recommend Pfizer's shots for tots. FDA vaccine chief Dr. Peter Marks supports vaccines for youngsters, noting nearly 450 children under the age of 4 have died during the pandemic. The CDC has final say. A judge convicting a Delaware man and his adult son on charges stemming from the deadly Capitol riot. Kevin Seafried and Hunter Seafried waived their right to a jury trial, opting to take a chance with a judge.
Prosecutors say they traveled to Washington, D.C. from their Delaware home for the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th and were among the first to approach the Capitol during the riot. Photos of Kevin Seafried carrying a Confederate battle flag inside the Capitol were widely published.
Fox's Tanya J. Powers. Americans tightened their belts last month as inflation drives up the cost of just about everything.
Economists have been expecting consumers to pull back on some spending because of higher prices. It happened in May. Retail sales declined 0.3%. Higher gas prices and higher interest rates make it more expensive to buy and own a car. Also, car dealers are still dealing with low inventory because of chip and part shortages. Retail sales, excluding autos, rose 0.5%. Americans have have changed their spending habits from early in the pandemic when they were fixing up their homes. In May, they were getting out and spending more on gasoline, travel, and dining in restaurants. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
The man who tried to assassinate President Reagan in 1981 no longer has to answer to authorities. A judge removing John Hinckley Jr. from all court oversight after determining he's no longer a threat. Hinckley tweeting, after 41 years, 2 months, and 15 days, freedom at last. Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity and spent decades in a Washington mental hospital. I'm Steve Rappaport, and this is Fox News.
From the historical audio archives of Fox News Talk.
The nation's air traffic controllers went on strike on August 3rd, 1981, grounding about 7,000 daily flights. 3 days later, President Ronald Reagan took an unprecedented move to break the strike. He fired all 12,000 air traffic controllers in retaliation.
Let me read the solemn oath taken by each of these employees. I am not participating in any strike against the government of the United States or any agency thereof. It is for this reason that I must tell those who fail to report for duty this morning they are in violation of the law, and if they do not report for work within 48 hours, they have forfeited their jobs and will be terminated.
Stay tuned to hear more history as it unfolds before your ears. It's the audio archives of Fox News Talk.
From the most powerful city in the world, unconventional talk from a fresh, unconventional conservative, Guy Benson Show.
A fresh hour here on the Guy Benson Show, our middle of 3 hours between 3 and 6 p.m. Eastern every weekday. Welcome in. Thanks for listening. If you can't catch the entire program live, which we do recommend, there's a podcast, which we also recommend, at GuyBensonShow.com or FoxNewsPodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts. It's free of charge on demand each and every day, including Bonus Benson on the weekends. At Guy Benson Show, Twitter and Instagram. You can follow us on social. Catch me tonight on TV. I'll be on the Evening Edit with Elizabeth McDonald, 6 p.m. hour Eastern time on Fox Business Network. Fox News alert as we get into this middle hour. The Dow closes up today, 303 points, a surge on Wall Street. The Dow ending the day at 30,668 amid a very eventful day. This from the Wall Street Journal earlier. The Federal Reserve approved the largest interest rate increase since 1994, signaling it would continue lifting rates this year at the most rapid pace in decades as it races to slow the economy and combat inflation that is running at a 40-year high. Officials agreed to a 0.75 percentage point rate hike at their two-day policy meeting that concluded today. This also coming on the same day that Americans' retail spending declined last month. This is also via the Wall Street Journal, as consumers felt the pinch from inflation, higher gas prices, and rising interest rates. Retail sales, a measure of spending at stores, online, and in restaurants, fell a seasonally adjusted 0.3% in May from the previous month, according to the Commerce Department. That was the first decline in month-over-month retail spending this year. The pullback in spending, another indicator showing the economy is losing momentum as the Federal Reserve takes action that we just told you about to raise interest rates and combat historically high inflation. Consumer spending, buoyed by strong job growth and stimulus measures, was the backbone of the country's economic recovery since a brief recession caused by COVID occurred in early 2020. The strength is now fading in the face of the strongest pace of inflation in 4 decades. And of course, amid that 4-decade high level of inflation, we have astronomical gas prices, more than $5 a gallon across the country. And the new talking point, I guess this is the latest messaging galaxy brain decision that they've made over there at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. The White House line now is to appeal to the oil company's patriotism or something. Cut 30, this was just minutes ago.
We are calling on them to do the right thing, to be patriots here, and not to use the war as an excuse or as a reason to not put out a production, to not do the capacity that is needed out there, so that the prices can come down.
That was Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, who definitely sounds like she knows exactly what she's talking about. Didn't that soundbite just infuse you with confidence that she knows what's up? Be patriots and lower gas prices and don't use the war as an excuse. I think the people using the Putin war as an excuse are inside the White House. This administration has been uber relentlessly hostile to the oil industry. And now they're like, hey, ramp up production. What are you guys doing? Explain yourselves. Be patriots. Embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Let's see what they come up next week. What they come up with next week or next month. Because they're going to be dealing with some very painful realities being felt by the American people for a long time. They're going to run out of scapegoats, I think. But we'll see. Maybe they'll get really creative. In any case, joining us now on a separate matter is Shannon Bream, chief legal correspondent here at Fox News, also anchor of Fox News Channel's Fox News at Night. Every weeknight at midnight Eastern, she's host of the podcast Livin' the Bream. She's a best-selling author twice over, including her latest book, The Women of the Bible Speak. And Shannon, you are a very busy person, and we are very grateful to have you here.
It's always my pleasure, Guy.
I would like to pick your brain as an expert on the Supreme Court and a very savvy and plugged-in court watcher. I know a lot of Americans, especially many in the media, are sort of hanging on every single decision day when the court is handing down rulings. Could this be the day that we get the guns decision? Could this be the day that we get the abortion decision? That was not the case here this morning. Another slew of rulings, not necessarily on those really big hot-button issues, but still some cases being decided. Just so far, what are we seeing in terms of any patterns or trends that you're noticing in these decisions and maybe the splits, which justices are lining up with whom, with what the coalitions might be looking like? And then what's the expectation of when, for example, Dobbs, the abortion case out of Mississippi, might finally drop for real? Because I think we got the leak. We kind of know what's going to happen, but it's not official yet.
Correct. And listen, every opinion day, I receive texts, emails, phone calls. Today's the day. Today's the day. I got several of those today. I think everybody is obviously very anxious to get the answers on that particular case. Obviously, it's still in the headlines for weeks because of that leaked draft and where we think we're going with that. It's interesting. We've seen some interesting splits with Justice Gorsuch. He definitely has a libertarian streak to him, and with he's often a very strong voice on the Native American issues. We had a tribal gambling decision that came out today. His deep work in the 10th Circuit and out in Colorado, he has sort of almost a little niche of experience, of expertise in dealing with some of those particular issues. So we've seen him and Justice Barrett break a lot this term, which is interesting. She's showing her independence as a new justice and goes with different coalitions. She's moved around quite a bit. But, we haven't seen too much that would lead us to believe that the five we think are on board with Dobbs and sending the issue of abortion back to the states has moved at all. From everything that I can tell, it has essentially, that coalition of five has stayed together.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fine. We love dogs in the background on the radio and on television. We just love dogs in general here on the program. It's interesting, though, because I'm seeing some lefty commentators sort of expressing surprise that Amy Coney Barrett and Neil Gorsuch are not just lockstep conservatives together on every single ruling or every single case. And I mean, that shouldn't really be that surprising. These are independent thinkers. These are very smart people. I know there's this cartoon version that these coalitions are just purely ideological and they all vote together every time, unless, it's a really small case or something like that. That is not turning out to be true. It actually never really is true. I would say the progressives, when the chips are down, typically do stick together on the big cases, but we've seen this type of pattern over and over again, and it's just weird to see people surprised over and over again that actually these are not just automaton robots who vote the way Republicans tell them to or whatever. It's not how it works.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That keeps the ideological, sides together, but there's a lot of mixing. And today we had two unanimous opinions. I mean, you don't often hear about that. One was from Justice Kavanaugh, one from Justice Sotomayor. Those are more common than people would think. The craziest mix-up that we had today, well, there were a couple, not mix-ups, but meaning the mix of justices. The third case that we got that was on that Native American tribal gambling situation, it was written by Justice Gorsuch, and it was him, Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, Breyer, and Barrett. And the dissent was Chief Justice Roberts, Thomas Alito, and Kavanaugh. So you just never know. You can't assume that you know what people's positions are going to be. We get a lot of clues from the oral arguments, but even those can have kind of smoke screens and rabbit trails. So until it's on paper and comes out that door, you just don't know.
On the Dobbs case, this abortion case, we seem to have the evidence that there will be 5 justices on board for overturning Roe, invalidating Roe, and sending abortion policy back to the states. And it looks also likely that there is a 6th vote, Chief Justice Roberts, to uphold Mississippi's law, which restricts most abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy. So 5-4 maybe on one split, 6-3 upholding that limitation on abortion. There's a little bit less anticipation. I might even say, and just kind of alter my adjective here, I'd say there's a lot less drama and anticipation for the Dobbs case because of the leak. And to your point, Shannon, there's no indication. In fact, there are a few in the other direction suggesting that anyone has changed their mind. The evidence appears to show that the coalitions are set, and we know what's actually going to happen ultimately with that decision. So usually it's a total black box. You have no idea what's going to come out, and everyone is just waiting and waiting and waiting for those papers to be handed to clerks who then go, rushing down the steps and hand it to the media, interns running around and all that. That's good stuff. In this case, in this unprecedented leak, unless something changes, which again, it doesn't seem to be the case, we kind of know the outcome of one of the most highly anticipated cases ever, which is a weird feeling to have in some ways. So I guess my question for you, twofold. Number one, do you think that the justices are going to wait, as they traditionally do, to put out the most controversial, most anticipated decisions on the very last day, so then they get out of town as soon as they're out? Is that your best bet on Dobbs, when we're actually going to see that, maybe even a few weeks from now? And secondly, relatedly, has there been any update on the source of that leak, this unprecedented, I would say really damaging to the institution, leak of the draft opinion from Justice Alito?
Mm-hmm. I do think the coalitions stick together. There's been a ton of pressure on the chief, as you know, to get this opinion out the door because there are threats. I talked to someone today, and they didn't understand it. Of course, if you don't, really plug into the court, you may not know that the votes on that draft mean nothing. They don't mean anything. And if you take somebody out of that vote matrix, it changes everything potentially about this case and certainly about the court. So to get it out the door, there's been a lot of pressure since the leak happened. What I've been told from internal deliberations, a couple of things. First of all, that the 5 are still together, at least at the last point I was updated. And also that there was no expediting of the case internally. There was no call for those dissents to get in earlier because, of course, the majority draft is circulated. You wait for the dissents to come in. They have their chance to respond. And then the majority gets a chance to wrap it up all in a bow and respond to the dissents. And then you get, ultimately, what everybody votes for and puts out the door. And I'm told that the dissents were not expedited, that they took their time getting them in. So that lends me to think this would traditionally end at the end of the month, as we would think. But again, knowing there's that pressure because there are actual threats on people's lives to get this thing out the door. I do think it'll probably be the last week of June, but we're prepared every day just in case it is earlier. No updates on the leaker. And, there is a conversation about Does the chief wait until everything is out the door, you get those cases out, and then say, here's what we found? I think my guess is that's how he would prefer to do things. But remember, if it does in any way involve a clerk, after July, they go on to their next job. And they are not.
Maybe not, though. I mean, that could be grounds for termination, I would say, even at a future job. That makes sense what you're saying. I would love some resolution to that, but we will know in the weeks to come. Shannon Bream, our friend on The Guy Benson Show. We'll be right back.
Paid for by Christian Care Ministry.
Let's see, if something costs less, but people are happier with it, that sounds like something to look into, and that's Medi-Share. Maybe you've heard switching to Medi-Share to pay for healthcare can save the typical family $500 a month, and that's huge, but it's also true that people are way more satisfied after making the switch, too. The customer satisfaction rate for Medi-Share is double that of the typical health insurance plan. Medi-Share works. It's been around for more than a quarter century, and members have shared more than $3 billion of each other's bills. People love having telehealth and a huge nationwide PPO network. So, yeah, you can save a ton and like it better. Imagine being happy with how you're taking care of your health care. So if you're self-employed or part of the gig economy, or you just want a plan you're happy with, you can call right now and get a price within 2 minutes. A very, very smart use of 2 minutes. Here's the number you need. 855-51-BIBLE. That's 855-51-BIBLE. 855-51-BIBLE.
This man has just entered the gas price madness zone, pushed over the edge by skyrocketing gas prices. The remedy? Upside, the free app that gives you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Hey, wait a minute. Did you just say there's a free app I can get that'll actually pay me cash back on every gallon of gas I buy?
Yes. Escape the gas price madness zone with the Upside app and earn real cash back on every gallon of gas you buy.
Yeah. Enough of the theatrics. Just tell me more about this Upside app.
Okay, it's super easy. Just download the free app and use it whenever you buy gas. Upside users can earn hundreds of dollars in cash back.
Wow, thanks, announcer guy. I'm downloading the Upside app now.
Download the free Upside app to earn real cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code MINUTE for an extra 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first fill-up. You can cash out anytime. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code MINUTE for a 25 cents per gallon or more bonus on your first tank.
Stay on top of the latest forecast with America's Weather Team in the palm of your hands.
Here's the latest from America's Weather Center.
It's Fox weather updates throughout your busy day, every day.
5 inches of rain by tomorrow.
Temperatures being 30 degrees above average.
Put the power of over 100 meteorologists and the worldwide resources of Fox in your hands with the Fox Weather Podcast. Precise, personal, powerful. Subscribe and listen now at foxnewspodcasts.com.
This is Fox News Talk.
Headline Rewind.
1986.
Despite our repeated warnings, Gaddafi continued his reckless policy of intimidation, his relentless pursuit of terror. He counted on America to be passive. He counted wrong.
Engines throttling up, 3 engines now at 104%. Challenger, go with throttle up. Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
An official announcement from the Council of Ministers. There has been an accident at the Chernobyl atomic power station.
Clearly, this disease, which strikes men and women, children and adults, people of all races, must be stopped. It is estimated that 1.5 million people are now infected with the AIDS virus.
The United States has not swapped boatloads of plane loads of American weapons for the return of American hostages, and we will not.
News as it happened. News as it happens.
This is Fox News Talk.
This is Fox on Justice. A former school administrator in Virginia has filed a lawsuit over what she says was a racially hostile work environment. Emily Mace was an assistant principal at Agnor Hurt Elementary School until last September, when she claimed she was forced out of her job for what she calls a slip of the tongue during an anti-racist training session. The training sessions in Albemarle County, Virginia, were based on a book called Courageous Conversations About Race. The book says racism can only be committed led by the dominant race, meaning white people. Kate Anderson is an attorney with Alliance Defending Freedom, representing Emily Mace.
She's branded a troublemaker for speaking out against a policy that was overtly racist to students. It told teachers that they had to treat students differently based on their race, teach them differently, grade them differently, discipline them differently.
A district spokesman says school board officials have not been served with the lawsuit and have not had a chance to review its allegations. Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Democracy 2022 on Fox News. Your liberty, your freedom depends on the right to vote. And at this critical moment in our nation's history, empower yourself with the knowledge, the information, and the insight. Be inspired by the voices and opinions America turns to. That's why more Republicans, Democrats, and independents watch Fox News. Democracy 2022. Your freedom, your vote.
Back on the Guy Benson Show. Thanks for listening. So I have to admit that I thoroughly enjoyed reading a very lengthy piece, tens of thousands of words, in The Intercept, which is a left-wing publication, about the state of the professional left in America today, progressive organizations, often DC-based. It's written by a guy called Ryan Grim. I saw that it was shared across social media, and I wanted to take my time and luxuriate in the Schadenfreude. Because the upshot of the story is these organizations on the left have become so insanely woke that they cannot actually accomplish anything beyond attacking each other and eating each other alive from within under the power structures of wokeism. Oh, it is just delicious. It's nourishment. Ramesh Ponnuru on Twitter quipped, "I'm not going to read the story all at once. Some things have to be savored." And that's right. Like stories like this, for instance. Now, we talk about wokeness and the excesses of weaponized political correctness on this show all the time. We sometimes make fun of it in our Woke Tales segment. We do it on the radio. I write about it at townhall.com. I post about it on my social. I co-authored a book about the dangers and the toxins of this kind of culture back in 2015. End of discussion with Mary Catherine Ham. With the paperback, updated version in 2017. We were talking about cancel culture and the woke mobs before woke and cancel culture really were terms that people were using. And while it's disturbing to see people's lives destroyed or livelihoods disrupted or ended because of these mobs, and they come after conservatives, they come after just average people, often very unjustly or disproportionately or totally falsely. Remember the story of the random guy who got fired because his hand was resting out of his window in his pickup truck in the shape of an OK sign? And he was like within a mile of a Black Lives Matter rally, and someone took a photo and had him reported to his employer in California, saying that was a white supremacy gesture. This was a Hispanic guy. He lost his job over nothing, just a completely made up crazy thing. And those examples have proliferated across the whole country, which is why we fight it regularly on this show. However, what's interesting about the phenomenon is that the people, I think, who are most likely to get sucked under and taken out by it are people on the left. Progressives, quote unquote, in good standing, people on the team, people in the tribe, people who have more or less consented to the lunacy because they marinate in it. They participate in it. These are their rules within their milieu, within their self-righteous, neurotic political team, and a very angry, bitter, dysfunctional ideological family. That's what they've got going on over there. And so if you kind of buy into it or at least indulge it and play along with the rules, and the rules are capricious and always changing and wielded by bad faith people who want to punish and settle scores and advance their agenda, whatever that might happen to be in the given moment, if that's the situation that you have placed yourself in, then yes, you are going to be extra likely to be victimized by it, particularly vulnerable to it. And is that unfair in some cases? I would say yes. Is it a little bit more enjoyable and less upsetting? I would also say yes. Because this is what you get for being part of the professional hard left. This is what you get. It's like, oh, well, I did not expect this leopard to eat my face. Oh, and all of a